I learned that pride does not keep you warm when the rain comes through your coat, but sometimes it is the only thing left between you and the world that wants to see you beg. The diner windows were crying harder than I was that night, streaked with rain and neon until the whole street looked bruised blue and red. It was 1:37 in the morning on the south side of Chicago, the hour when decent people were asleep and desperate people were still pretending they had choices. I stood behind the counter at Rosie's all-night diner with cold coffee on my sleeve, 2 quarters in my apron pocket, and a stomach so empty it had stopped complaining an hour ago. The heat had been broken since Monday. The owner said repairs cost money, and money apparently was something only customers were allowed to need. My shoes made a soft squeak every time I moved because the rain had soaked through the cracked leather on my walk from the bus stop. I kept smiling anyway, not because I was happy, because smiling was part of the uniform, just like the faded blue dress, the little white name tag that said Emily, and the rule that girls like me were supposed to be grateful for whatever they got. The last customer before him had left a 50-cent tip and a napkin with his phone number on it. I threw the napkin away and kept the coins. Pride had limits. Rent did not. My phone buzzed under the counter, and I glanced down even though I already knew it would be bad news. Final notice. 48 hours before lockout. I stared at those words until they blurred. Apartment 3B, with its radiator that hissed like a tired snake and its kitchen window that never fully closed, was not much of a home. But it was mine. Or it had been, until late fees became legal threats and legal threats became a countdown. I turned the screen face down, wiped my hands on my apron, and refilled the sugar jars like the world had not just given me 2 days to become homeless. That was when the bell above the door rang. Not a cheerful little sound. Not that night. It cut through the diner like a warning. 3 men came in first, all dark coats, quiet steps, and eyes that moved before their bodies did. They did not look around like customers deciding where to sit. They looked around like they were measuring exits. Then he stepped in behind them. Vincent Moretti. I did not know his name yet, but the room seemed to. The air changed around him. Conversations died. Even the old refrigerator behind me seemed to hum softer. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with black hair combed back from a face too calm to be kind and too controlled to be ordinary. His suit was charcoal, tailored perfectly, dry despite the storm somehow, like rain knew better than to touch him. He carried no umbrella. One of the men behind him did. That told me everything I needed to know about the kind of man he was. Powerful. Expensive. Dangerous in a way that did not need to announce itself. He sat in the back booth beneath the flickering Miller Lite sign, the one with a clear view of the front door and the kitchen hallway. His men stayed nearby but not too close. I picked up the coffee pot and walked over because fear did not pay rent either. Coffee? I asked. My voice came out steady, which felt like a small miracle. His eyes lifted to mine. Pale gray. Quiet. Not soft. Just awake in a way that made me feel seen past my skin, past my uniform, past every little lie I had learned to wear. Black, he said. No please. No Ismail. Just one word, low enough that I had to lean closer to hear it, though I wished I had not. I poured. My hand did not shake until the last second, when a drop spilled onto the table. I reached for a napkin fast, embarrassed by something that did not matter, because poor girls learn to apologize even to polished wood. Sorry, I whispered. He looked at the drop of coffee, then at the burn mark near my wrist from the espresso machine, then at the phone half hidden under the counter across the room where the eviction notice still glowed in my mind even though the screen was dark. Long night? He asked. I gave him the waitress smile. The one that said I was fine because nobody really wanted the truth with their coffee. Aren't they all? For a second something moved across his face. Not pity. I hated pity. This was sharper. Like recognition. Like he had found a crack in a wall and was deciding whether to break it open. I turned to leave before he could ask anything else, but his voice stopped me. You work here alone? I looked back. I work here employed. One of his men glanced at him, as if waiting to see whether I had made a mistake. Vincent did not blink. Then, almost impossibly, the corner of his mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. More like the memory of one. I walked away with my pulse too loud in my ears and told myself men like him were only storms in better clothing. You lowered your head, let them pass and hoped your roof survived. I did not know then that Vincent Moretti had already seen the notice on my phone. I did not know he had already noticed my wet shoes, my empty plate behind the counter, and the way I held my spine straight because everything else in my life was falling apart. I only knew that when I looked up again, he was watching me like I was not a waitress in a failing diner at 1:37 in the morning. Like I was a problem he had not expected to care about. By 2:10 in the morning, the diner had gone quiet enough for every sound to feel personal. The rain tapped against the glass. The fryer hissed in the kitchen. The clock above the pie case clicked forward like it was counting down to something I could not stop. Vincent Moretti stayed in the back booth with his black coffee untouched, while his men spoke in low voices around him. They did not laugh. They did not check their phones. They watched the windows, the door, the street beyond it. I kept pretending not to notice. Pretending was a survival skill I had learned young. Pretend the landlord was only being strict, not cruel. Pretend the ache in your feet was temporary. Pretend $50 could stretch into groceries, bus fare, and another week of not falling apart. I was wiping down the counter for the third time when Earl, the night cook, leaned through the order window and nodded toward the back booth. "You know who that is?" he asked, voice barely above the radio static. "A man who drinks coffee he does not touch." Earl did not smile. "That is Vincent Moretti." The name landed heavier than it should have. I had heard it before, of course. Everyone in that part of Chicago had. Moretti meant restaurants that never closed, construction sites that never got delayed, nightclubs where the police never seemed to park outside for long. Mothers lowered their voices around that name. Men who liked to sound tough suddenly remembered appointments when someone mentioned him. I looked back before I could stop myself. Vincent was still watching the rain, one hand resting beside the cup, perfectly still. He did not look like a roomer. That made him worse. Then maybe he should pay for his coffee and go haunt someone richer, I muttered. Earl gave me a look. "Emily." "What?" "Do not be brave around men who do not need permission." I hated that. Not because he was wrong. Because he sounded like everyone else who thought fear was wisdom and pride was a luxury poor people could not afford. Before I could answer, the bell above the door rang again. Caleb Ross walked in wearing a tan overcoat too thin for the weather, and a smile too comfortable for a man who collected other people's misery for a living. My chest tightened before my face changed. Caleb worked for the property company that owned my building, though worked was too clean a word for what he did. He delivered notices, added fees, suggested private arrangements. He liked cornering tenants in hallways and explaining how easy it was for paperwork to become a problem. His eyes found me immediately. "There she is," he said, shaking rain from his coat like he owned the floor beneath it. "Apartment 3B. I picked up the coffee pot because my hands needed something to do. Diner is open. Personal business is not." He laughed and slid onto a stool at the counter. "Too close. Personal business? Emily, sweetheart, when you owe what you owe, everything is business." Behind him, the back booth went silent. I felt it before I saw it. The men in dark coats had stopped speaking. Vincent had turned his head slightly, not enough to interfere, just enough to listen. Heat crawled up my neck. Not shame exactly. Anger wearing shame's coat. "I have 48 hours, I said quietly. "I read the notice." Caleb leaned forward, lowering his voice but not enough. Men like him never truly whispered when humiliation was the point. 48 hours if nobody accelerates the file. But fees change. Locks change. People who cooperate get options. My fingers tightened around the coffee pot handle. "I am not interested in your options." His smile thinned. "You are too proud for someone one bad week away from sleeping at a bus station." The words hit the room and stayed there. Earl disappeared from the order window. The other customer, an old man in a Cubs cap, stared down into his soup. I could feel Vincent's attention like a hand at the center of my back. I wanted to vanish. Instead, I set the coffee pot down very carefully. "Then I will sleep standing up," I said. My voice did not shake. That was the only victory I had. Caleb's face hardened, but before he could speak, Vincent stood. No scrap. No dramatic movement. Just suddenly he was no longer seated, and somehow the diner seemed smaller. He walked to the counter with the quiet confidence of a man who had never needed to hurry in his life. Caleb looked over his shoulder, annoyance flashing first, then recognition, then something colder. "Mr. Moretti," he said, all the smugness draining out of him. Vincent did not answer right away. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit, took out a money clip, and placed a stack of bills beside his untouched coffee. The top bill was 100. There were too many beneath it. "For the coffee," he said. I stared at the money, then at him. "Coffee is $2.75. Then the rest is for the service." My pride rose so fast it almost choked me. I picked up the stack and held it out to him. "You made a mistake." His gray eyes settled on mine. "I do not make mistakes with money." "Then you mistook me for someone who can be bought." The diner went so quiet I heard rainwater dripping from Caleb's coat onto the floor. One of Vincent's men shifted near the door. Vincent only looked at me, and for the first time since he walked in, something in his expression changed completely. Not anger, not insult, interest, sharp and unexpected. He took the money from my hand, slow enough not to touch my fingers. "Keep the change," he said, and placed exactly $3 on the counter. Then he looked at Caleb Ross. "You should leave." Caleb opened his mouth, thought better of it, and stood. He did not look at me as he walked out. Vincent returned to his booth, but the air did not return to normal. My pulse was still hammering when I picked up his cup and found, folded beneath the saucer, a plain white business card with only a number printed in black. No name, no title, just a way out I had not asked for. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I slipped it into my apron pocket and hated myself a little for knowing exactly where it was. I did not call the number that night. I told myself that while I cleaned the last table, while I counted the register twice, while I tied the trash bags and dragged them through the back door into the alley where rainwater ran along the pavement in dirty silver streams. I told myself that a business card from a man like Vincent Moretti was not help. It was a hook. It was a door that locked behind you. It was the kind of favor that looked clean in your hand and turned into a chain later. So I left it in my apron pocket and pretended paper could not burn through fabric. Earl offered to wait with me until my bus came, but his daughter had a fever and his wife had already called 3 times. I told him I was fine. I said it with the kind of smile women use when they are tired of explaining why they are not fine at all. By 2:58 in the morning, Rosie's was locked, the neon sign was dark, and I was walking alone beneath streetlights that flickered like they were thinking about giving up too. The bus stop was 4 blocks away. The rain had softened to a mist, but Chicago cold did not need permission to get under your clothes. My hands were numb by the time I reached the corner. That was when I saw Caleb Ross leaning against the shelter, one foot propped behind him, tan coat buttoned, hair damp, smile waiting. I stopped so suddenly my wet shoes slid half an inch on the sidewalk. "You are predictable, Emily," he said. "Same shift. Same bus. Same proud little face." I looked past him at the empty street. No headlights. No other people. Just the low hum of power lines and the soft hiss of rain in the gutter. "Move," I said. Caleb pushed away from the glass. He did not touch me. He did not have to. Men like him made space feel smaller without lifting a hand. "You embarrassed me in there. You embarrassed yourself." His smile twitched. "Careful. That apartment of yours is already gone. I could make sure your paycheck is next. Rosie does not need trouble from the property company. Neither does Earl." My throat tightened at Earl's name. That was how people like Caleb worked. They did not always come straight at you. They circled the people kind enough to stand nearby. "This is between you and me." "No," he said softly. "This is between you and reality. Reality says you need help. Reality says you should have taken my offer before someone else decides what happens to you." My fingers found the edge of the business card in my pocket. I hated that I noticed it. Hated that a piece of paper could feel like a lifeline and a betrayal at the same time. I did not pull it out. "I am not afraid of you," I lied. Caleb's eyes dropped to my pocket, and his expression shifted. "Did Moretti give you something?" The name made the air colder. I said nothing. He stepped closer and I stepped back, my heel catching the curb. A black SUV turned the corner before I could fall. Its headlights cut through the mist, bright and silent, and it rolled to a stop beside the bus shelter like it had been summoned by the thought I refused to have. The rear door opened. Vincent Moretti stepped out, no umbrella again, his charcoal coat darkening under the rain. He did not look surprised to see Caleb. That was my first clue. He had not left. He had been nearby the whole time, watching, waiting, deciding how much of my pride he could respect before my safety mattered more.
Caleb straightened fast.
Mr. Moretti, this is a private conversation. Vincent's gaze moved from Caleb to me. Not possessive. Not soft. Assessing. Did he touch you? My pride answered before my fear could. I can handle myself. That was not what I asked. I hated the steadiness of his voice. I hated how badly I wanted to borrow some of it. No, I said. He did not. Vincent nodded once, then looked back at Caleb. Then leave while this is still only embarrassing. Caleb swallowed. I saw it. The tiny movement at his throat. I was just explaining her options. She said no. 2 words. Quiet. Final. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, then stepped away from the bus shelter with the stiff dignity of a man trying not to look frightened. He walked into the mist without looking back. I should have felt relieved. Instead, anger rushed and hot enough to warm my hands. Were you following me? Vincent did not deny it. Yes. The honesty threw me harder than a lie would have. That is not protection. That is surveillance. Tonight it was both. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. Men like you always have a nicer word for control. Something in his eyes flickered. Not guilt. Not yet. But the beginning of being struck where armor was thinner than he thought. Get in the car, Emily. No, one of his men shifted beside the SUV, but Vincent lifted one hand without looking, and the man went still. It is 3 a.m. It is 38 degrees. The next bus is not coming for 20 minutes. Then I will wait 20 minutes. Caleb has friends. So do you, apparently. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low. I am offering you a ride. And what will it cost? He looked at me for a long second, rain sliding down the sharp lines of his face. Nothing. That is what men say when the price is hidden. Silence stretched between us. A siren wailed somewhere far away, then faded into the city. Vincent reached into his coat, and for one wild second I thought he would offer more money. Instead he pulled out my phone. My phone with its cracked corner and old blue case. You left it on the counter, he said. I stared at it, then at him. You could have given it to Earl. I wanted to make sure you got home. You do not know where home is. His eyes held mine. Not anymore. The words landed before I understood them. Then my stomach dropped. Apartment 3B. The final notice. Caleb's smile. What did he do? I whispered. Vincent opened the SUV door wider. This time there was no command in his face. Only something worse. Careful restraint. Your landlord changed the locks 20 minutes ago. For a moment the city lost sound. The rain kept falling. The headlights kept shining. My pride stood tall inside me, shaking, soaked, useless against a locked door. I took my phone from his hand. My fingers brushed his glove for less than a second. I am still not asking, I said. Vincent stepped back, giving me space to choose the open door or the empty street. I know, he said. That is why I am still here. I got into Vincent Moretti's car because the alternative was standing in the rain beside a bus shelter with nowhere left to go. But I made sure he understood the difference between accepting a ride and surrendering my life. The inside of the SUV was warm enough to make my frozen hands ache. Leather seats, tinted windows, the faint smell of cedar and expensive cologne. A world so far from my cracked kitchen floor that I felt like I had stepped into someone else's mistake. Vincent sat beside me, not too close, not touching. His body angled slightly toward the window as if he knew I needed space more than comfort. One of his men drove. Another sat in the front passenger seat, silent as stone. No one asked questions. That should have made me feel safer. It did not. Silence around powerful men always felt like a contract you had not read yet. I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen, but there was nobody to call. My mother had been gone 12 years. My father had disappeared long before that in all the ways that mattered. Friends drifted away when your life became a list of emergencies they could not fix. Earl had a sick child. Rosie would blame me for bringing trouble to the diner. So I sat there with rainwater dripping from the hem of my uniform onto a floor mat that probably cost more than my weekly groceries, and I tried not to cry because crying in front of Vincent felt like giving him something. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safe." "That is not an address." His eyes shifted to me. "A hotel on Michigan Avenue." I let out a cold laugh. "Of course. You will have your own room. Your own key. No one will enter without permission. And the bill? Handled. By you." "Yes." "Then no." The driver's eyes flicked to the mirror. Vincent did not react. "Emily, do not say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you already know what I am going to do." For the first time he looked almost tired. Not physically. Men like him probably had doctors and chefs and people who made exhaustion optional. This was something older buried deeper. "I know what scared people do when they are cornered," he said. "They mistake every open door for a trap." I turned toward him. "And men like you mistake every closed door for a challenge." That landed. I saw it in the slight stillness around his mouth. The SUV moved through wet Chicago streets, past dark storefronts, red traffic lights, boarded windows, and office towers with a few lonely floors still glowing. The city looked beautiful from behind tinted glass, which made me resent it more. Poverty looked different when you were not standing inside it. "Take me to my apartment," I said. "The locks were changed." "Then take me to see it." "There is nothing there for you tonight." "My clothes are there. My mother's recipe box is there. Her old nursing pin is there." My voice cracked on the last word and I hated myself for it. Vincent's gaze sharpened, but he did not ask about my mother. He only leaned forward slightly. "Turn around," he told the driver. 10 minutes later we pulled up outside my building. A 4-story brick walk-up with flickering hallway lights and a front step that smelled like damp concrete. My belongings sat in black trash bags near the side entrance. Not all of them. Not carefully packed. Just dumped. My chest went hollow. I opened the door before the SUV fully stopped and stepped into the rain. Vincent followed, but he stayed a few feet behind me. Smart man. If he had tried to comfort me, I might have broken in half just to spite him. I knelt beside the first bag and untied it with numb fingers. Work shirts. A cracked picture frame. 2 mugs. Wrapped in a towel. My mother's blue sweater, still faintly smelling like lavender if I pressed it close enough and lied to myself. The second bag held books, shoes, old mail. The third had kitchen things. No recipe box. No nursing pin. I stood too fast. They kept some of it. Vincent's voice was quiet. "What is missing?" "Things that are not worth money." "Then they were taken for another reason." I looked at him through the rain. "Do not make this into one of your business problems." "It became my problem when Caleb used your home to punish your pride." "My pride is not the problem." My voice rose, echoing under the awning. "Everyone keeps saying it like it is a disease. Like if I were smarter, I would smile at the right man, take the right money, sign the right paper, and be grateful when somebody decides how much of me I get to keep." Vincent's face changed then. Not much, but enough. The rain ran down his coat. The streetlight cut one side of his face in silver, the other in shadow. "You think I want to own you?" "I think men with power rarely know the difference between helping and holding." He looked away first. That surprised me. "You may be right." Those 4 words were so unexpected that I forgot what I was going to say. Vincent stepped closer, slowly, leaving the space between us untouched. "I will get back what is yours. Not because you owe me. Not because I expect gratitude. Because what happened here was wrong." I swallowed hard. "And if I say no? Then I stop." The answer was immediate. No performance. No anger. Just a line drawn where I had asked for one. The rain softened around us. Somewhere upstairs a baby cried. A car passed too fast through a puddle, spraying the curb. I looked down at my life in trash bags and felt the weight of every refusal I had ever made. "I still do not trust you," I said. Vincent nodded. Good. Good. Trust should be earned. Especially from someone who has had too much taken. I hated that he understood that sentence better than I wanted him to. I picked up the bag with my mother's sweater, holding it against my chest like something alive. Vincent did not reach for it. He only opened the SUV. Doran waited. This time when I got in, it did not feel like surrender. It felt like choosing shelter without handing over my soul. The hotel on Michigan Avenue looked like the kind of place where people arrived with luggage that matched and problems that could be solved by credit cards. Its lobby glowed gold and white. All marble floors, tall flowers, and quiet staff who did not stare even though I walked in wearing a damp waitress uniform and holding a trash bag against my chest. Vincent walked beside me, not ahead, not behind. That detail bothered me because I noticed it. Men like him understood positioning. He could have made me look like someone he owned or someone he was rescuing. Instead, he let me walk through those glass doors like I belonged there, even though every polished surface reflected the truth back at me.
Wet shoes.
Tired eyes. A woman carrying the last pieces of her life in plastic. At the front desk, the manager took one look at Vincent and stood straighter. No questions. No credit card swipe. No request for identification from me. Just a key card placed on the counter with both hands. Suite 2214, Mr. Moretti. Vincent did not touch it. He looked at me. It is under your name. I stared at the card. How do you know my full name? Caleb said your apartment number in the diner. Your landlord records were not difficult to find. My stomach tightened. That is supposed to make me feel better? No, he said. It is supposed to be the truth. I picked up the card because arguing in a lobby while shivering felt less dignified than silence. The elevator ride to the 22nd floor was quiet except for the soft hum of cables and the distant rush of rain against glass. Vincent stood on the opposite side, hands folded in front of him, eyes on the doors. I wanted to ask why he was doing this. I wanted to accuse him before he could disappoint me. But exhaustion had teeth and mine were sunk deep. The suite was larger than my entire apartment. Living room, bedroom, bathroom with white towels stacked like clouds. A view of the city shining wet beneath us. Someone had already placed food on the table.
Soppbröd, der fruit.
Cut into perfect slices. My pride flared on instinct. I did not ask for dinner. Vincent stayed by the door. No. Then why is it here? Because you have not eaten. I turned slowly. You do not know that. His gaze moved to the untouched plate of cold fries still visible through the clear side of the trash bag. Leftovers from a customer I had almost taken home and then thrown away because even hunger has lines it refuses to cross. My face burned. You notice too much. It is how I stayed alive. The words were simple. Quiet. They did not ask for sympathy, which made them harder to ignore. I set my mother's sweater on the back of a chair and walked to the window. Chicago stretched below, dark and glittering, full of people sleeping in warm rooms while mine sat gutted behind a changed lock. You said my mother saved your life, I said. Vincent did not move. The silence behind me changed shape. Yes. Her name was Margaret Carter. I know. I turned. His face had gone still in a way that made him look carved instead of alive. How? He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and took out a small folded paper, worn soft at the edges, protected inside a clear sleeve. He did not hand it to me at first. He looked at it like it was something heavier than paper. 12 years ago, I was brought into Mercy General after an accident near Halstead Street. I had no identification on me. No one who came with me wanted questions asked. Your mother was the nurse on duty. My breath caught. Mercy General. Night shift. My mother had worked there until the month before she died. I remembered her coming home with tired feet and peppermint gum on her breath, remembered her washing her hands too long at the kitchen sink, remembered the way she looked at me sometimes like she had seen the world at its worst and was trying not to bring it inside. She helped everyone, I said. That was her job. She did more than her job. Vincent's voice dropped. She stopped people from making decisions over me, while I could not speak for myself. She said a man without a voice was still a man, not a problem to be moved. Something in my chest twisted. That sounded like her. Painfully like her. He finally held out the paper. I took it with careful fingers. It was a note in my mother's handwriting. I knew it instantly, the slant of the letters, the firm pressure, the way she crossed her T's like small stubborn bridges. Do not let powerful men confuse payment with gratitude. I read it once. Then again. The room blurred at the edges. Where did you get this? She left it with my things when I was discharged. I tried to pay her. She refused. Then she gave me that. And you kept it? He looked at me, and for the first time Vincent Moretti seemed less like a storm and more like a man standing in the ruin one had left behind. It was the first honest thing anyone had given me in a long time. I folded the note carefully, but my hands were no longer steady. So what is this? I asked. Repayment. No guilt. Maybe. I appreciated that he did not lie. You cannot fix my life because my mother was kind to you. I am not trying to fix your life. You put me in a hotel suite and ordered food like I am some project. His jaw tightened. You were locked out in the rain. And you thought money solved that. Money solved the room. It does not solve what it costs to accept it. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of every difference between us. His empire. My trash bags. His control. My refusal to become one more thing a man could arrange. Vincent looked at the food, then at the key card on the table, then back at me. Then tell me the cost, he said. No debt, I said. No favors I have to repay. No men outside my door unless I ask. No decisions made about me without me. He nodded once. Done. Do not agree just because you are used to winning. I am agreeing because you are right. That should have softened me. It did not. Not completely. But something inside me loosened by one careful inch. I looked down at my mother's note again, at the warning she had left him and somehow left me too. Then Vincent reached for the door. Eat, Emily. Sleep. In the morning we get your mother's things back the way you asked. I lifted my eyes. The way I asked? He paused in the doorway. With proof. With lawyers. With your permission. The door closed softly behind him, and for the first time all night, I was alone in a room no one could throw me out of. I sat at the table, touched the bowl of soup, and let the warmth rise into my hands. I still did not trust Vincent Moretti, but my mother had once trusted him with a sentence. And somehow 12 years later that sentence had found its way back to me. Morning came slowly, not with sunlight, but with the gray shine of rain clouds pressed against the hotel windows and the strange panic of waking up somewhere too clean. For 3 seconds I forgot everything. I thought I was in my old apartment, listening for the radiator, waiting for the floorboard outside my bedroom to creak the way it did when the upstairs neighbor left for work. Then I saw the skyline through glass that reached from floor to ceiling, the untouched half of the soup on the table, my mother's sweater folded over the chair, and memory returned like cold water. I had slept in my waitress uniform. My shoes were lined up beside the door because some part of me still believed I needed to be ready to run. At 8:04 in the morning a soft knock came, followed by Vincent's voice through the door. It is me. No key turning. No handle moving. Just the knock and the wait. I opened the door with the chain still on. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He held up a paper bag from a coffee shop downstairs and a plain folder. Breakfast and documents, he said. That is a disturbing combination. His mouth moved almost into a smile. Usually effective. I closed the door, removed the chain, and let him in because refusing coffee after the night I had survived felt less like dignity and more like self-punishment. He set everything on the table and stepped back. Inside the bag were eggs, toast, fruit, and a large coffee with cream and 2 sugars. The exact way I drank it at Rosie's. I looked at him. You asked Earl. I asked Rosie. Rosie would sell my coffee preference for a $5 coupon. She gave it for free. Then you scared her. Probably. At least he was honest. I opened the folder before touching the food. Pages of rental records, late fee notices, photographs of my belongings in the hallway, copies of city tenant protection rules highlighted in yellow. A business card slid loose from the papers. Lydia Grant, tenant rights attorney. She can meet you at 10, Vincent said. She is not one of my people. She works for a non-profit in Pilsen. I made a donation years ago. She owes me nothing and you owe her nothing. I read the name twice looking for the trap. You arranged this while I was sleeping? Yes. My head lifted. Without asking me. He went still. The kind of still that told me he understood the mistake 1 second too late. I thought you would want options. Options are not options when someone else lays them out like a path I am expected to follow. His eyes lowered to the folder. You are right. The words came faster this time but not easier. I could see what it cost him to stop defending himself. Maybe that should not have mattered. It did. Power apologizing without dressing itself up is hard to look away from. I want my mother's things back, I said. I want my apartment records corrected. I want Caleb Ross and that property company to stop doing this to people who cannot fight back. Vincent nodded. Then we do that. Legally. Yes. Publicly if we can. His gaze sharpened. That may take longer. Then it takes longer. I pushed the folder back toward him, not because I was refusing it, but because I needed him to understand the shape of my yes. I am not asking you to save me. I am asking you to stand where I can see you and not move me around like a piece on your board. For a moment Vincent said nothing. The city below moved in gray streaks, taxis cutting through puddles, people under umbrellas rushing toward lives that had not been emptied into trash bags overnight. Do you know what my first instinct was when I saw your things in the rain? He asked. To make someone regret it. His voice stayed calm, but there was old darkness under it. Not graphic. Not loud. Just the habit of a man who had learned to answer every insult with force before he learned any other. Language. I held his gaze. And what is your instinct now? He looked at my mother's note on the table, still protected in its clear sleeve. To ask what you want done. The answer settled between us like the first honest brick in a wall neither of us knew how to build. I sat down finally and wrapped both hands around the coffee. It was hot enough to sting. Good. I needed something real. I want to meet Lydia Grant, I said. I want to call Earl and tell him Caleb threatened his job so he is not blindsided. I want to go back to Rosie's for my next shift because I am not disappearing just because Caleb expected me to. Vincent's jaw tightened at that last part, but he only said, all right. You hate that. Yes. But you will not stop me. No, I took a sip of coffee to hide the way my throat tightened. It tasted exactly right, which somehow made me want to cry more than the eviction had. Why are you really doing this, Vincent? I asked. And do not say my mother. He looked toward the window, his reflection pale against the city. For the first time he looked like a man choosing truth over usefulness. Because last night when you handed my money back, I realized I have spent years surrounded by people who say yes because they are paid to, afraid to, or waiting to benefit from it. He turned back to me. You said no like it was the only clean thing you had left. My fingers tightened around the cup. Maybe it was. Then I will not be the man who takes it from you. The room went quiet. Not empty quiet. Breathing quiet. The kind that comes after a door opens somewhere inside a person who thought every door was locked. At 9:15 we left the hotel together, not side by side this time, but with me half a step ahead because I chose the direction. Vincent noticed that too. He did not correct it. And as the elevator doors closed, I saw his reflection behind mine, dark suit, calm face, hands empty at his sides, a powerful man learning the hardest thing I could teach him. Sometimes protection begins with stepping back. The non-profit office in Pilsen sat above a bakery, and the whole stairwell smelled like cinnamon, coffee, and raindamp wool from everyone's coats. It was the kind of place I trusted immediately because the carpet was old, the walls were crowded with flyers in English and Spanish, and the receptionist looked at me like a person instead of a problem to process. Lydia Grant was in her 40s, with silver threaded through her dark hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She did not seem impressed by Vincent Moretti, which made me like her before she even shook my hand. Miss Carter, she said, motioning me into her office. I reviewed the documents Mr. Moretti sent. I also pulled 3 public complaints against your property company from the last 18 months. I sat across from her, my hands wrapped around the paper cup of bakery coffee Vincent had bought downstairs and then handed to me without a word, as if he had finally learned that kindness did not always need an announcement. Vincent remained near the door until Lydia looked over her glasses at him. You can sit, Mr. Moretti. You are making my filing cabinet nervous. For one beautiful second I saw him hesitate. Then he sat in the chair beside mine, looking too expensive for the room and somehow less in control because of it. Lydia walked me through everything slowly. The lockout notice was improper. The fees were inconsistent. The personal property removal violated city procedure. Caleb Ross had no authority to threaten my job or contact my workplace. Each sentence landed like a match struck in a dark room. Not enough to burn the whole thing down. Enough to show me where the walls were. Can I get my mother's things back? I asked. Lydia's face softened. We start with a demand letter this morning. If they do not comply, we file for emergency relief. We will also request a full accounting and report the pattern to the city. Pattern. That word stayed with me. I was not the only one. I was not some unlucky girl who failed at life while everyone else managed to stand. There were others. Other doors changed. Other bags in hallways. Other women sitting in rain with their whole lives tied in plastic. My anger became steadier then. Less like fire. More like steel. I want the pattern included, I said. Vincent turned slightly toward me. Emily. No, I looked at him before he could finish. Do not make your worried voice at me. Lydia coughed like she was hiding a laugh. Vincent's expression did not change, but his eyes did. I was going to say that including the pattern may make this more public. Good. It may make Caleb try to pressure you again. Then he can do it where everyone can see. Vincent's jaw tightened. The room cooled around him, not because he said anything harsh, but because silence had always been his sharpest language. I recognized the instinct in him. Close the door. Move the threat. Handle it in the shadows where men like Caleb learned fear from men like Vincent. I set my coffee down. No, his eyes met mine. I did not say anything. You did not have to. Lydia looked between us and wisely pretended to study a document. I leaned closer, lowering my voice not because I was afraid but because this part mattered. If you make him disappear from the problem stays. Just gets quieter. I have spent my whole life surviving quiet problems. I am done. Vincent looked at me for a long moment. You think the law will be enough? No, I said. I think the law with witnesses, records, tenants, and someone powerful standing where people can see him might be. That finally reached him. I watched the shift happen, small and difficult. He had offered me a sword because that was what he knew how to carry. I was asking him to become a shield in daylight. Lydia folded her hands. There is a tenants' meeting tonight at St. Agnes Church. Some residents from your building may attend if they know they are not alone. My heart beat once hard. Then I will go. Vincent said nothing. That was his first yes. At 6:30 that evening, St. Agnes smelled like floor wax and old hymnals. Folding chairs filled the basement hall. People came in slowly at first, then in clusters. An older man from the second floor. A mother with 2 children. A delivery driver I had seen carrying groceries up 4 flights of stairs. Earl arrived too, still in his kitchen jacket, face tight with worry. When he saw me, he crossed the room and hugged me like a father would, careful and fierce. You should have called, he whispered. I know, I said, and for once I let the words be true. Caleb Ross arrived 15 minutes late, wearing that same thin smile, but it faltered when he saw the room. Then it broke completely when he saw Vincent standing in the back beside a stack of donation boxes. Not hidden, not threatening, simply present. Caleb looked at him, then at me, trying to decide which one of us was the danger. For the first time I hoped he chose me. Lydia called the meeting to order and invited tenants to speak. My legs felt hollow when I stood, but my voice did not. I told them about the lockout, the fees, my mother's missing recipe box and nursing pin. I did not cry. I did not perform pain for sympathy. I just told the truth in a room where the truth had witnesses. When I finished, the silence was not empty. It was full of people recognizing their own story and mine. Then a woman in the second row stood and said, "They did that to my sister." Another man raised his hand. Then another. Caleb moved toward the exit, but Lydia stepped into his path with a folder and a calm smile. "Mr. Ross, you may want to stay. The city inspector is on her way." I looked back at Vincent. He was watching me, not Caleb. And in his eyes I saw something I had not seen before. Not control. Not pity. Respect. The kind that does not bend a woman into a softer shape before it decides she is worth protecting. By the time the city inspector arrived, St. Agnes had stopped feeling like a church basement and started feeling like a courtroom built from folding chairs and tired people who had finally gotten tired in the same direction. Caleb Ross tried to smile at her. It was the wrong smile. Too practiced. Too polished. The inspector, A short woman named Denise Harper with a navy coat and a clipboard thick with forms did not smile back. Lydia handed her the folder. Tenants handed her photographs. Earl handed her the name of the manager who had called Rosie's that morning asking whether I was still worth the trouble. One by one, the quiet things became written things. That was what I had never understood before. Shame lived in silence, but evidence needed a table, a pen, and someone willing to say this happened to me too. Vincent stayed in the back the entire time. He did not interrupt. He did not command the room. He did not even stand close enough for people to think I was speaking through him. But everyone knew he was there, and that changed the temperature. Not because they trusted him. Because men like Caleb understood men like Vincent in a way they never bothered to understand women like me. When the inspector told Caleb that the city would be opening a formal review of the property company's lockout practices, his face went pale beneath the fluorescent lights. "This is a misunderstanding," he said. His voice had lost its smooth edge. "Miss Carter fell behind on rent. We followed procedure." "You changed her locks before the legal window closed," Lydia said. "You removed her belongings without proper notice," Denise added. "You contacted her workplace in a way that may be considered retaliatory." Caleb looked toward Vincent then, like a man searching for the real authority in the room. Vincent only looked at me. He left the answer where it belonged, so I gave it. "You also took things that belonged to my mother," I said. Caleb blinked. "I did not take anything. Her recipe box. Her nursing pin. Maintenance may have placed valuables in storage. Then bring them back." He laughed once, small and nervous. "This is not a grocery pickup, Emily." I stood. The chair legs scraped against the floor, louder than I expected. My hands were cold, but they were steady. "Miss Carter," I said. Caleb frowned. "What?" "If you are going to lie in front of witnesses, you can at least use my name like you respect the person you harmed." The room went still. Not because I had shouted. I had not. That was the strange power of it. My voice stayed quiet and he still heard me. Maybe everyone did. Denise wrote something on her clipboard. Lydia's mouth softened at the corner. Earl looked down, blinking too fast. Caleb reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. "I will make a call." "You will make it on speaker," Lydia said. He did not want to. That was obvious. But the room had turned against every private door he was used to hiding behind. He called the building superintendent. 5 minutes later, we all heard the answer. Yes, some items had been placed in the basement office. Yes, a blue metal recipe box was there. Yes, there was a small silver pin in a plastic bag taped to the lid. My knees almost gave out. I gripped the back of the chair and held myself upright by pure stubbornness. Vincent moved half a step forward, then stopped himself. I saw it. That small war inside him. The instinct to catch. The choice to let me stand. It mattered more than he knew. Denise instructed Caleb to arrange immediate return of my belongings and access to my apartment pending legal review. Lydia added that any further contact with my workplace would be documented. The other tenants began speaking again, not in whispers now, but in full voices. Someone asked about late fees. Someone asked about repairs. Someone asked whether their sister could file too. The basement filled with the sound of people discovering that fear was lighter when shared. At 8:12, Caleb walked out of St. Agnes with the city inspector beside him and Lydia one step behind, heading to my building to document the storage room. I went too. So did Earl. So did half the tenants. Vincent followed last, quiet in his dark coat beneath the church awning, rain silvering his shoulders. My apartment building looked smaller when we arrived as a group. Less like a threat. More like bricks and bad management. The superintendent avoided everyone's eyes as he unlocked the basement office. The room smelled like dust, old paint and damp cardboard. My recipe box sat on a metal shelf between a broken lamp and a stack of maintenance forms. Blue paint chipped at the corners. My mother had taped a faded label on top years ago in her careful handwriting. Carter family. I touched it with 2 fingers before lifting it, afraid that if I moved too fast, grief would spill out with the index cards. The nursing pin was there too, sealed in a plastic bag, silver dulled but whole. I pressed it against my palm until the edges bit lightly into my skin. Not pain. Proof. "Miss Carter," Denise said gently. We will need photographs, then you can take them. I nodded because if I spoke I would break. Vincent stood in the doorway, watching the whole thing with an expression I could not name. Later, outside under the awning, while Lydia talked to the tenants and Earl called his wife to say he would be late, Vincent came to stand beside me. Not too close. Never too close now. You got them back, he said. I looked down at the recipe box in my arms. We got them back. His eyes shifted to mine. You did. I should have corrected him again. I did not. Because this time he was not trying to disappear himself into power. He was giving the victory back to me. The rain had slowed to a fine mist. Across the street, a bus pulled up, brakes sighing, doors opening for strangers with grocery bags and tired faces. Ordinary life kept moving, even after yours almost stopped. I am going back to work tomorrow, I said. Vincent did not look happy. I know. And I am going back to my apartment when Lydia says it is safe. I know. And you are not going to buy the building just to make this easier. He was silent for 1 second too long. I turned slowly. Vincent. He looked away, almost guilty. I was considering it. Despite everything, I laughed. A real laugh, small and surprised in mine. His eyes came back to my face like he had never heard that sound before. Do not, I said. Help should open doors, not turn them into prettier cages. He absorbed that quietly, like my mother's note all over again. Then he nodded. Then I will find another way. I held the recipe box tighter against my chest. For the first time since the diner, I believed him. The next morning, I went back to Rosie's before sunrise with my mother's nursing pin in my coat pocket and her recipe box sitting on the passenger seat of Earl's old pickup. He had insisted on driving me, partly because he cared and partly because he wanted to see Caleb's face if he showed up again. The sky over Chicago was the color of wet newspaper, and the streets still held puddles from the storm, reflecting traffic lights in broken red and green lines. Rosie's neon sign buzzed weakly when I unlocked the door. The diner smelled the same as always. Burnt coffee, lemon cleaner, old grease, a little sadness, a little hope. I tied on my apron, wrote the soup special on the chalkboard, and stood behind the counter while the coffee brewed. For the first time in days, my hands did not shake. At 7:20, the breakfast crowd started coming in. Construction workers with orange vests. A woman from the laundromat next door. 2 cops who always ordered pancakes and argued about baseball. People looked at me a little longer than usual, because news travels faster than buses in neighborhoods like ours. Some smiled. Some nodded. Nobody said pity words, and I loved them for that. At 8:03, Caleb Ross walked in. He looked worse in daylight. Smaller somehow, without rain and shadows to help him. His coat was wrinkled. His smile was gone. The whole diner quieted, not dramatically, just enough for the spoons to stop clinking. Earl appeared in the kitchen window, arms crossed. Rosie stopped counting receipts. I felt the old fear rise, the one trained into me by overdue notices and men who liked private conversations. Then I felt the nursing pin in my pocket, its small silver weight pressing against my leg, and the fear found nowhere to sit. Caleb walked to the counter and placed an envelope in front of me. Your corrected rental statement, he said. His voice was stiff. And written confirmation that your lease remains active pending review. I looked at the envelope but did not touch it yet. Where is the apology? His eyes flicked around the diner. He had not expected an audience. Men like Caleb never do. Excuse me. You heard me. My voice stayed calm. You changed my locks. You dumped my things in the hallway. You called my job. You tried to make me feel small enough to accept whatever you offered. So where is the apology? A chair creaked somewhere behind him. The coffee machine hissed. Caleb's face reddened. Miss Carter, he said through his teeth. I apologize for any distress caused by the administrative confusion. No, the word came out clean. Try again without hiding behind office language. His jaw tightened. For 1 second I thought he would walk out. Then the bell above the door rang. Vincent Moretti stepped inside wearing a dark overcoat and no expression at all. He was alone this time. No men in suits. No silent wall of power. Just him, standing near the door with rain on his shoulders and his hands empty. Caleb saw him and went pale. I saw him too, but I did not step back. I did not move behind him. Vincent did not move toward me either. He simply stood there, exactly where I could see him, doing nothing more than keeping his promise. Caleb swallowed. "I am sorry, Miss Carter," he said lower now. "For what?" I asked. His eyes dropped. "For using your situation against you. For mishandling your belongings. For contacting your workplace. For disrespecting you." The words were not perfect, but they were public. Sometimes justice does not arrive as thunder. Sometimes it comes as a man who thought he owned the room being forced to say your name correctly in front of witnesses. I picked up the envelope. "Thank you." Caleb left quickly, the bell shaking behind him. The diner breathed again. Earl disappeared into the kitchen muttering something about eggs, but I could hear the pride in his voice. Rosie wiped at the counter even though it was already clean. Vincent remained by the door until I looked at him. Then he approached the counter like any other customer. "Coffee?" I asked. His eyes softened barely. "Black." I poured him a cup and set it down. He placed $3 beside it. Exact change. I almost smiled. Learning restraint? Slowly. Painful. Extremely. This time I did smile. Felt strange on my face. Honest. He looked at it like he had been handed something fragile. "I found another way," he said. I waited. A housing fund. Independent board. Lydia agreed to help structure it. Safe emergency rooms for tenants locked out illegally, legal support, temporary stays, no favors attached. My throat tightened before I could stop it. "Vincent. It will be named after your mother, if you allow it." The diner blurred at the edges. I looked down at the counter, at his untouched coffee, at the $3, at my own hands that had carried trays and trash bags and one blue recipe box back from the dark. "The Margaret Carter house," I whispered. He nodded. "Only if you choose." That was the difference. The whole difference. Not the money. Not the power. The choice. I looked at the man everyone in Chicago seemed to fear and saw, for the first time, the man my mother must have seen 12 years ago. Not safe. Not simple. But not unreachable. "Yes," I said. "But the board stays independent. Already written. And tenants do not have to thank you. I prefer that." Liar. A real smile touched his mouth then, small and brief, gone before anyone else could have noticed. But I noticed. I was always noticing him now, which was dangerous in a quieter way. The breakfast rush picked up again. I moved from table to table, refilling coffee, taking orders, laughing when Earl burned toast and blamed the bread. Vincent sat in the back booth beneath the flickering sign, not watching me like a problem anymore, but like a person he was still learning how to respect. By noon, sunlight broke through the clouds and touched the diner windows until they no longer looked like they were crying. I did not become fearless that day. Fear does not vanish just because one man stands behind you. But dignity is not refusing every hand. Sometimes dignity is choosing which hand is allowed to stay. And when Vincent Moretti left Rosie's with his empty coffee cup and his quiet promise, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach him, and what life had taken so long to teach me. Help should never make you smaller. Real help leaves you standing taller than before.